You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Alex G, and I want to welcome you to a new episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. I am really excited about having one of my best buddies, one of my closest friends on the show today. His name is Peter Ahn. He hails from Bergen County, New Jersey. He lives in Leonia, but he does a lot of work in Engelwood. He has this global heart for doing things around the world that's really empowering Black people. I'm sure his perspective is greater than that, but I've just seen his work up close. And what makes this so special is that he's a Korean American leader. We met years ago. We'll probably get into that a little bit on the show, but we've been doing segments about our white allies and how we've worked together. And I want our listeners to understand that I'm working very diligently with like-minded leaders like Peter to build a stronger relationship, not only between Blacks and Asian Americans, but more specifically the Black community and Korean American leaders. And so, Peter, I want to welcome you to Black Like Me, man. Welcome.
It's so great to be here. Am I the first Asian person on the show?
Man, you are. And so,
right.
You know what? You are a trailblazer, man. So listen, welcome.
It's an honor. It's an honor to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
You know, listen, I have to let you know, I was out with you and your folks and your congregation a few weeks ago. I want you to know that after that, you gave a great plug to Black Like Me. New Jersey has now passed New York City in downloads, or New York State. That includes the city,
awesome.
Of course. So you've helped me just have New Jersey get out ahead of the curve. And so, hey, New Yorkers, y'all better get a little bit more attitude, a little bit more downloads, and handle your business, because New Jersey is making this thing work. So, man,
and
welcome.
I'm competitive, so I want to be number one. So we got to beat Madison out now. So that's what we're going to go for.
Oh, it's like that. Okay,
yeah,
okay, man. I got you. So listen, Peter, I know you've listened to the show, so you know I do something that's called a Black Icebreaker. And I'm not going to give you a free pass just because you're Korean American. And so you got to answer some Black questions. And so we're going to do our Black Icebreaker. First of all, let me just start by asking you this question, sir. When you look at, let's just say, food or culture or music, or maybe just boldness, where do you think Blacks and Koreans in this country have most in common? Where have you noticed some similarities between our culture?
Oh, definitely food.
Really?
I think food is a big one. This might be just, sort of embracing some stereotypes. I mean, Korean people, you've enjoyed our food. We love fried chicken. I mean, we have some of the best fried chicken.
Banchan chicken.
You bring banchan home.
I wrap that stuff up and bring it home.
We fry the chicken twice. We don't even fry it once. We fry it
because you're competitive. Because you want to make sure you out fry everybody.
Wait,
what do you mean?
Twice, so
what do you mean
more
you?
Crispier. So for us, the food is so similar. We have similarities in what we like to eat. So I think that's a huge one. I think also similarities, I would say also is just that Black people, Korean people, we're very passionate people. We love to be expressive in some ways.
So you're saying we both talk loud.
Yeah, and especially when we think about faith and how we worship and stuff like that, definitely when you go, especially to more Korean churches, like particularly older folks like my parents' age, you could definitely sense the passion, the more charismatic side come out and stuff, and so there's definitely some of that. I do feel like, Black Christians and Korean Christians respect the pastor very similarly, and so I think there's definitely parallels there as well. So yeah, there's definitely parallels.
That's great. That's great insight.
Can I ask a quick question real quick?
This is white privilege right here. I didn't bring
oh, man.
Black people and Korean people are talking, but come on, white man. Yes, sir. This is your world. What would you like to say, Tyler? You're white, you're male, you're 25, you're free. What would you like to say, Tyler? I have a question,
a cultural question maybe. You said you wrapped up the chicken and brought it home. You fly.
Peter tells them that I'm taking it back home to Madison on a plane. So they double wrap it We cellophane.
Put a Ziploc bag in
we
there.
zip it. Peter goes home. He puts it in a Ziploc bag. I put it in my carry-on. I put it in the overhead because I'm not going to put it on the floor.
It's serious stuff.
Underneath the seat. Now people look at me and they're like, "What is that?" And I know it just opens up the stereotypes. They're like, "That black man smell like fried chicken." And so, but you know, sometimes you just got to lean into the stereotype. And so yeah, Peter knows, and Jackie loves it because there's two kinds. It's like this restaurant around the corner from his house. They have like the hot kind and then like the regular kind. So Peter, I need you to know.
Loves the hot kind.
She likes the hot kind. Tyler and I were hanging out in Chicago about a month ago, and we came to this intersection. He was taking me to a nice little coffee shop, and we saw Banchan. It said coming soon. Banchan chicken. So
yeah, you told me about that.
So we're still okay. I'm still going to come out to New Jersey. I don't want you to think that I'm going to put you down.
You better.
No, man. Okay, I got to ask you a couple of other black ice breakers.
Yes.
Do you know what a do-rag is?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever worn one?
No, I've not. It's because my head's so big, and I have sort of like an octagon-shaped head, so I won't look good on a do-rag.
No,
bro.
they make ones that have like stretchy material, but it'll work. It'll work those waves out, man. We get some Korean waves.
But then people are going to see the shape of my head, and it's not round.
No,
it's kind of like shaped like an octagon, so it's just not right.
Man, that's crazy. Listen, did any of your Korean American relatives put plastic on the living room furniture so that you wouldn't get it dirty? Do you know what? That's like a black family
I know what you're
thing.
talking about. I do know some do, not all. Some do.
Are you serious?
Some do.
I didn't know. We're breaking all kinds of stereotypes on black like
I'm
me.
serious. No, absolutely.
Plastic.
Yeah. We don't want to get our furniture dirty.
All right, man. How many times have you seen Black Panther?
2.
2 times, man. Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved it. Although that Korean woman that they had on that show,
Yes.
her Korean was horrible. I was really sad about that. I wish they actually picked somebody who could speak Korean. Her Korean was horrible.
You know what? You're the second.
movie.
You're the second person to say that to me. In fact, a mutual friend that we have said that the person who spoke the best Korean in that scene was the African American, was Lupita. That she actually spoke the best Korean.
Was amazing. It was amazing. Her accent, the way she enunciated, was better than that Korean woman who couldn't speak Korean. So it was actually quite sad. Yeah.
Man, that's so interesting. So Peter, you and I we've been friends for years, man. We've seen the world together. You actually are the friend that invited me to the motherland. You tried to get me to go to Africa. I'm afraid of shots, and so I kept turning you down because I didn't want to get shots. But you invited me to South Africa. But then when I was on a trip to South Korea, you hadn't been in years. And so we sort of we both have this interesting relationship where I love Korean culture. I've been to Korea twice. I love, just some of the feel that I get in the community. But I always feel at home when you and I go out so often. We'll hit places where I'm the only African American that's there, eating. And so it's very interesting how you have this love for Africa. I have this love for Korea, but we both have helped each other embrace our own homelands as well. I mean, I think that's kind of interesting, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do. I think it's very unique, and it's rare, especially when you look at some of the history between African Americans and Korean Americans.
Right.
It hasn't all been good, but we can't believe in just that. That doesn't sum up who we are. But I think I think as the more I've been getting to know you and getting to know other of my black friends, there's so many similarities, and I just it's just great to have fellowship and to know and to get to know more. I learn a lot more about myself. I learn a lot more about God and the richness of life just through the diversity of relationships that I have. And so I feel like I'm just extremely grateful and thankful for the kinds of folks that God's brought into my life, particularly the black community.
Wow, that's great. Peter, I got to tell you that when you and I started talking about Africa and going to Africa together, I didn't really understand why is this Korean American guy concerned with what's happening with black people, and particularly black people around the world. And so when I went to see this work that you're supporting, I'm going to have you talk about it in just a minute, but Zamele Huetu, it was this incredible empowerment program of black women who lost their husbands because either they went and found other families or they died of HIV/AIDS. But I saw the empowerment work of how you didn't do work for the families, but you gave them support. You built up the strength that they already had, and they're building grocery stores and schools and things like this. And so, again, part of this segment is that I want to show that that we're building bridges. The African Americans are building bridges with the white community, the Korean American community, the broader Asian community, because it really takes everyone to work on these issues together. So just could you just take maybe 30 seconds or so and just tell me about what Zemele Wetu is and how you first became involved, and why you became involved?
Right. Well, I'll start with the why first. I feel like, when we started our church about 14 years ago, I'm very aware of the sort of the tensions between, the African American community and the Korean or the Asian American community, I should say. It's just there. I mean, it's just the reality of it. And I just thought, well, what would it look like if we can just kind of go to Africa and with the whole HIV and the AIDS pandemic, really being sort of like the leprosy of our generation. I just thought, what would it look like if we can go out there and just kind of experience God and see what happens? And I think that was just really the sort of the motivation of what we did. And so we originally went to go visit an orphanage. And when we visited the orphanage, it really impacted our lives. We met so many amazing orphans and the kids. And I think what we saw was such a contrast between the kids in orphanages where they were happy, they were smiling, they were having a great time. And then when we went to the valleys and the villages, we just saw so many kids that weren't smiling. They were sad, and oftentimes they had this look where there was no life in their eyes. And it was just heartbreaking to see that we saw children dying of HIV, and it was just overwhelming. And so I think part of this was just to realize, like, what can we do in the communities to just come alongside to truly try to empower the Black community, the Zulu community in South Africa. And Zemele was just this vision that this person had who founded the organization, and her vision was really to help people stand on their own 2 feet. So it's not about me as an American saying I'm going to help these people, because I think that sometimes Americans like to do things like that to make themselves feel good about themselves. This is about true empowerment. I don't really have much of a role other than maybe just supporting it financially and getting to know and being in relationships with these people and just realizing that these people are teaching me things and they're showing me what true leadership is and what empowerment is and things like that. And so Zemele is really about a self-sustaining program to help people to stand on their own 2 feet through community so that they can do it on their own with one another as they begin to trust each other, because you know what happens in poverty, poor people don't trust each other. And so it really is trying to establish a trust with one another, realizing that we can't get out of poverty on our own, but we can do it if we can be here together, put our pennies together, and if we can do this, we can kind of create our own little micro bank, and we can give ourselves loans, pay interest on it, and that can start to grow, and that can encourage us to take greater loans so that we can, start little businesses and things like that. So Zemele, really, that was the vision of it. And then eventually, as these groups get bigger, now they come together, like 4 or 5 or maybe 6 different groups together, come together, and they ask themselves, okay, now that we're doing well, what can we do now for the community?
Right.
How can we impact and transform the community? And so they kind of start their own nonprofit. And then they start thinking about, we're going to start a preschool for kids so that moms can go and work and the kids can be in school and they can learn and stuff like that. They get a head start before they go into kindergarten, so they're going to start like a preschool, orphan care programs, home care services, a catering service, farmers where they come together and they sell their vegetables to supermarkets and things like that. So it's just, it's really an amazing organization that I don't feel like I can really take credit for, but just that I was at the right place at the right time, and there's an amazing group of Zulu people that's leading this organization in such a beautiful way, and I just feel honored to be a part of it.
And some of those leaders, Audrey, Kulani, have actually come to Madison to build a relationship. First of all, that was the longest plane ride I've ever had in my life. I know one time, we flew through Germany. I missed that connecting flight, but we're not going to talk about that, Peter. We're not going to talk about we're not going to talk about that. But then when we went, I think the second time we got whatever line we flew, we went through Dubai. So you and I spent like 24 hours in Dubai. Man, that was incredible.
That was awesome.
That airport looked like a museum with the way the floors were shining. And we drove on the highway and didn't see like litter or anything like that. Just wild. But what was really interesting for me when I got to South Africa, and I'm going to tie this back to work that you and I are doing together, but specifically some work that you're doing in Engelwood. But what I love was how warm the Zulu families, where the Zulu folks were with me as an African American. And there were nuances There were things that I saw and things that reminded me so much of my family. There was cooking that the taste of food, the way the chicken was fried, the fruit salad. That just it gave me such a sense of pride. And what was really incredible was that you're enjoying that with me. But what was really what I really love about this is, I've noticed that sometimes when people go on missions trips or they do work abroad, let's say if they do it in Romania or they do it in Haiti, they come back home and don't interact with Haitian Americans or folks who are connected to those communities. So it's almost like this exploratory thing that you do overseas. And then when you come back home, you sort of forget about it until the next time you go on this exploratory trip. But I love the fact that you drew clues, or you're able to draw out point indicators of how do you go about strengthening the African American community, or serving the African American community, or partnering with the African American community back home. So one of the things I really appreciate about your leadership is that you love the international work. It's obvious. Anytime I'm with you in South Africa, and we've been there together 3 times, the people are so glad to see you, and I can tell that they are family. I mean, there are times where you said to me that that felt more like home than any other place that you've traveled. But I love the fact that you're bringing that mindset to inform how you go about being a multi-ethnic church, not merely a multi-Asian church, but a multi-ethnic church, a multicultural church that's trying to live out what it means to be people of faith and true partners in Englewood, New Jersey, a place where, like Madison, there's a tale of two cities, where you've got the ultra rich, but then you've also got real struggling Black families. And that's where the folks at Metro, the church you started 14 years ago, that's where you all have decided to work and serve. And I think that connection, or that bridge that you built, was really, really empowering.
Well, no, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And, I just feel like, for me, it's really, for me, it's not like something that I set out to do from the beginning, but it's just something that God just continues to show me stuff. And I've been privileged to be in relationship with you, Alex, and some other folks in my life that's really opened the doorway. And I didn't necessarily sign up to do this, but I just feel like part of my role now is to just try to help people connect, and especially, the African American community as well as the Asian community here. And maybe we'll talk about this later, but, tomorrow, on Friday, actually, I've created this organization, not an organization, but a group of pastors, Korean pastors and Black pastors. And all we do every month is we get together, do life. We talk about what's going on in our own hearts and our congregations. And the hope is to break some of the dividing walls between the Korean American community and the Black community of faith. And so this is just a great group that allows us to come together like this, and we just share our hearts. We learn a lot from each other. We learn our presuppositions are wrong, and stuff like that. And it's just a great thing. And so we're really committed to this community here in Engelwood. And Engelwood is kind of like Madison. I mean, it's a tale of two cities. We have like some of the wealthiest people in the New York, New Jersey area living in Engelwood. Alicia Keys lives here. We have some celebrities, and it's just it's a hub for artists to come. We have a theater here, where artists from all over the world come and perform in concerts. But yet 25% of the population makes less than $25,000 a year.
Wow.
Kids go to high school practically illiterate. 87% of the kids don't have the proper math scores in their state scores to enter into high school.
And they're just passed along anyway?
They just pass along for the ride. They just go. They got to promote them. They got to graduate them no matter what. And so 87% of these students are going into high school not knowing simple math. And it's really a sad reality when that happens. 61% are at that level, at an English level as well, that they're just not able to write and read at the proper level. And so we're basically sending our kids illiterate in this city to high school. And why would they want to have any motivation to do well in school if they're failing like that? And there's a deeper story to that, right? And so as a result, there's a lot of youth violence here and crime and things like that. And when we came here about 11 years ago, we just felt like this is a community that God said, you need to be an incarnational presence here. And that basically just means God becoming flesh, and he's going to use our church community to do that. And so we're trying to do that to the best of our ability. And you know the story, Alex. There's been a lot of pain involved in it as well in our church.
Sure.
As well as through it. There's been a lot of growing pains, but we're just thankful that God's given us this opportunity and that my life has been fuller. My family's life has been fuller. I don't want to toot your horn, but I wouldn't be the kind of pastor, leader, father, husband I am today if it wasn't for you. And you're a Black African American man, and I've learned so much through you as well. And so all of that is part of all of this, for me. And I think that's the narrative of my life and how God is opening up these doors and kind of leading me in the place where I'm at today.
That's tremendous, and I thank you for those compliments. That means a lot. What I really appreciate about what you're doing is I'll just explain that. A diverse group of people listen to the podcast because we're wrestling with this ugliness called racial divide in our country. And I think on one hand, people are too afraid to try to do something together for fear that they're doing the wrong thing. And so I want to just applaud you for just jumping out to do or try something. Again, I'm not trying to say you're perfect. I'm not trying to say that your efforts are flawless, but you're getting out of the boat, so to speak, and you're doing something and you're trying something. But you have the ability. Let's just go back to Zameli Wetu. You had the ability to come back to the States and organize people who knew how to put on events. And so I know one of the things you've done, you wouldn't say this because you don't want to toot your own horn, but there's an annual gala that you and your friends, you sponsor. And so people come from New York and New Jersey. You have a nice evening. You have a speaker. You raise money. But that goes to support this work. And I love the way that you make sure you don't get in the way of the leaders. And that, like when Mama Zuma came over in the States, or we hung out with her the last time I was there, this woman spoke no English when we first met her. She was a grandmother raising her grandchildren. I think you had me be the speaker that day. I was speaking to a group of grandmas who were raising their grandchildren. Of course, that's something that I can relate to. But, she's risen to a place of leadership. Again, she had it within her. And you and I, we're not saying Peter or his group made this happen, but with finding out what the community wanted and what it needed, and you all helped to provide that or give them the space to really grow and develop their own leaders. They're already, having lending circles and calculating interest and those kinds of things. But like she gets to meet with tribal leaders as a woman, and an older Black woman. Older Zulu woman, but she's, helping to negotiate things. She has a political voice. And so you and I have also seen where the faith community has been very relevant in a community. It's helped to empower people to realize their innate abilities and skills to lead. And then you get to go and stand in the background and not be central to all of that and watch her negotiate on behalf of her village and her community. And I got a chance to see some of that the last time I was there. And that was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's funny because Mama Zuma, she's illiterate, and you met her at that time when you preached, and you saw her tearing up and crying and weeping. She never believed she was a leader, and that's the reality of what happens in these poor rural communities. Is that basically the best way I could describe it is this: is that they have a mirror, but the mirror is so dirty that they can't see themselves. And what past organizations have done is that they've basically gotten a picture and they put the picture on the mirror and they've told these people this is what you need to look like.
Right.
And they're not able to see themselves. And all Zameli is, and all kind of like my involvement is, all we have been for these people is we're just the Windex. We're just the chemicals to clean the mirror so that they can see themselves and see the beauty of how God made them. And so we can't take any credit for being Windex. We're just just to clean the dirt.
You're right, because Windex doesn't create images.
And they see themselves, then they realize the potential they can be. And so it's really not about us getting the credit to them because they can finally see themselves. And we will just empower them, resource them to the best of our ability. And they're just amazing leaders. Like Mama Zuma is a part of the chief's tribal court. No woman has ever been in the chief's tribal court in the history of
the Zulu nation,
and even the Zulu culture. She's the first woman to be in that, and so she is just impacting people's lives in the thousands.
Yeah, Peter, when I sat with you, in some of those meetings in those rural areas, I looked at the lending circle, where these poor moms were bringing their money, their coins, their change, and they were collecting it. And each day or week, a different woman would get to take the pot of money home. And I remember sitting there thinking, we consider ourselves rich in America. We consider South Africa poor, destitute, third world. But where in America will we let poor women, Black women, save money together, calculate interest together, and then say, okay, Bessie, it's your turn to take the money home tonight. I mean, the fact that we're realizing that they have the ability and we're getting out of their way to watch what they're doing. We didn't do that for them. You didn't do that for them. But I watched them save money, and I watched a woman take the money in her hand, the bag of money, and literally take it home, because there was such a sense of community that no one from that community is going to go in and have the shame of taking that, that money away, or just to watch, to believe that people have these abilities. And it just made me really approach my work in Madison differently. I mean, that's where I want to actually bridge us now to like what I'm doing to what you're doing, because I realize we've got it all wrong in certain places of our country, where the social workers, the outsiders, are the experts. They come in with the clipboards and the diagnoses, and they tell people what's wrong. But when you remove the impediments of leadership and faith, you get someone like Mama Zuma, who is functionally illiterate, but she is influencing politics and policy and economic life. And, she's a part of the discussion that talks about roads and what happens with the expansion of the roads. And it's reminding me that our best assets are in our inner cities. They're inside our communities. They're in Englewood. They're in Madison. And if we stop thinking that we got to save and rescue people and just use leadership development tactics or Windex tactics to just clear the mirror so people see themselves clearly, they have what it takes to really heal and strengthen themselves. And that's a message that I saw loud and clear, because I've been around the world. You and I both have been around the world, but I have rarely seen poverty, abject poverty, that surpasses what I saw in South Africa. But yet I saw how people rose to the occasion to lead, to build, and to create new realities, because people believed in their abilities. And we need to learn how to do that with struggling families in Madison, in Englewood, and other hurting communities in the United States.
Yeah, they have such pride. They have such pride in what they do. And when we go there to watch what they're doing, you can see the pride and how meticulous they are. And Mama Zuma is rich now. I mean, you and I, we visited her house a year and a half ago.
She's got a chicken coop that's bigger than some of the homes.
1,000 chickens in there.
1,000 chickens.
She's wealthy now. She is doing her thing. And so God
that's a lot of fried chicken.
That way.
That's a lot of chicken we can fry to bring back. That might be too long. That might be too long of a flight to wrap that up. But you're right. I mean, I saw her chicken. Peter, you're right. 1,000, and that's next door to her house.
Chicken.
And Peter, remember, it was raining, and so she wanted us to see her house. And I was like, no, our shoes are muddy. We walked through the fields because you're Korean American, so you take your shoes off, you go in the house anyway. I mean, because I've been in your house enough to know that, and that's not necessarily black culture, but you don't bring mud up in people's house. But she wouldn't let us take her shoes off. She said, no. But the pride of showing us her play, because she was like, no, I'll just mop up later. But the pride of what she's been able to build and establish, man. And so what excites me is that you've got that experience in your mind, so that as you approach a community like Englewood, you're not trying to save it any more than you tried to save Swamini in South Africa, but you're understanding what the touch points are. How do you build leveraging relationships? How do you give room for people to grow? How you bring people along? And so I'm assuming that you're employing you are planning on employing some of those same strategies as you go about really partnering with and empowering African Americans in your neighborhood, in your community where you serve.
Yeah, I think for me, my conviction is that, a Korean person or is not going to really change this community. I can't. And I think, what I learned from Zamele is simply I got to empower the indigenous leaders here.
Yes.
And the people here that have lived here, that have grew up here. That
the native sons and daughters.
Exactly. They are the ones, to be transforming this community. I can just support it, resource it, do the best I can, and cheerleader it on. But I have to raise up the leaders and find the leaders. And I'm so grateful that God's brought somebody to our church who's leading our community center efforts and leading what we're doing here in Engelwood. And she grew up in this area since she was in kindergarten, even before that. And she's the darling of the city. I mean, she is amazing. You met her. She's extremely gifted, and we're just so excited about her.
And she loves the community.
Like she is going to take and raise up other leaders here in Engelwood, and that this will be a movement with the people here, not outsiders coming in saying, here's what you need to do. It'll be a movement of people in the city.
What I love about that relationship, and you're right, she's an incredible leader. What happens in communities where, you and I, we've preached this, but there's a scripture that basically where Jesus is talking and says, if you're prophetic or if you have an unusual gift, it's recognized more abroad than it is at home. So the fact that the community and Metro is understanding that you are not the hero as a Korean American man, but that there's a darling of the city who grew up in the community, who knows the community and knows the family names and the schools and the structure and the politics. I've seen so many people get in the way of those indigenous leaders. And so her willingness to serve that community means she's not going to be as interested in leaving that community. One of the things I'm troubled by here in Madison is that African-American kids whose parents went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, kids who were born in St. Mary's Hospital or some local hospital like Lexi was, are leaving because they're not seeing opportunities for growth. Yeah. They're relegated to positions of special assistant to someone for minority relations. They don't get to really be a full scientist or full whatever it may be. They're always in that role where their job is to just help to explain or racial issues or to buffer. But for you to be bringing this leader in and say, help us. When I was there a couple of weeks ago, she was holding us. You all were holding community listening sessions, which I know from my work with Justified Anger and Nehemiah, you've got to do that. So when I just see that you all are collectively understanding that we've got empowered leaders, you're not just dropping the ball and say, all right, go make it happen. And you're not saying, hey, let us be the mouthpiece. Let us go be the go-between. This is how you turn communities around. I feel like I represent what you're doing in that leader. People gave me room and space, said, this is your community. You understand the context. You understand both sides better than anyone because you've been raised in Pharaoh's household. You've been educated with the kids of professors. You're a product of this great university. You voted here. You worked here. You started a nonprofit here. So you can help us to understand things from various economic perspectives, class perspectives, educational perspectives, ethnic perspectives. And so the wisdom that you all are utilizing in allowing her to help to shape the culture by not just being the in-house Black expert, but going out to the community and allowing the residents of Engelwood to be the experts. That's true community transformation, man.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I just feel like it's the only way to do it effectively. And I think if the person could just, I think if everyone could just see that. And, Alex, you're the one who helped me to see this. Years ago we were just talking, and I know you probably, I think you remember it, but you just said, it's important that Indigenous people are the ones transforming their communities, not people from the outside. And you said it just by talking to this other person. You were giving him some mentoring input.
I remember that.
I remember that just really resonated with me in such a way, and I just said, yeah, that's so true. Why in the world would I think I can do this, and stuff like that. And our goal is to make sure that we can find somebody from the community and raise them up and others, and let this be a movement from within the city here in Englewood. And like you said, there are geniuses here. There are creative geniuses. There are artists. There are just so many people here.
Entrepreneurs.
If they're just entrepreneurs. If we just give them the opportunity and let them know that this is their community and that we can give them the opportunity, I just think they can just take this thing so much further than I could ever take it.
Sure.
So my job is, I just realized, my sort of where I'm at now is just I got to get out of the way and just make sure that our Indigenous leaders are the ones leading this. People in our church, we have people who've been in Engelwood for 40 years, 40, 50 years and stuff like that. And so they are hungry now to want to lead this. And I'm just here to support, be a part of it, but I am not leading it. I can't be leading it.
Oh, that's important. And I want to say to, to my friends and to the folks of the podcast, sometimes we get a little squirmish around certain words, and we stumble a little bit on semantics. But when Peter and I talk about Indigenous, we're trying to find the right word that gives the connotation that an individual is a resource because they are an expert in that community. If we use words like community people, that sounds almost like they're disenfranchised and they're being allowed to come to the table. If we say urban people, it sounds like there's different standards of excellence. And so we're trying to find a word like Indigenous that really gives the sense that we're talking about individuals who are born and bred in Englewood or in Madison. Their parents probably were. They know where the good eateries are, the good bars are. They know where to go to get the right kinds of spices. They are the people who are the experts in what's going right and wrong in the community, but they're rarely brought to the table because they might not have the JDs or the MBAs or the BSs or the EMSs behind their names, or the prefixes before their names, but we're just trying to remind folks that while we're sitting in the ivory towers, in boardrooms, in governmental buildings, trying to figure out these issues, there's a black man sitting at a barbershop. There's a black woman cooking, catering an event. There's a black pastor in a storefront church who could tell you who the good politicians are and who the bad ones are. They can tell you this is when things go went wrong. This is what happened in the 50s. This is what Nixon instituted. They're political, they're theological, they're insightful, but because they don't have the pedigree that those who are elected or promoted have, they're often pushed to the side. And I'm a strong advocate that what is largely wrong with our inner cities are not the residents of the inner cities, but it is the ignorance of folks who are in power to understand the absolute asset that these individuals are, in not in just making the ethnic community better, in making the entire community better. If what you're doing goes off the way you want it to, it will make Englewood a stronger city, not just the black community in Englewood. Like in Madison, our goal is to strengthen all of Madison.
Yes.
We go about focusing on the black community. I think your challenge is going to be for Englewood is to understand that I'm really for Englewood. But when I look at the folks who are struggling, I'm going to empower I'm going to work for the African American community because, one, we're listening to the community and they're inviting us in. And they're wanting to work with us, and they believe that we are going to affirm them as individuals. But you are really, what you're doing is promoting a methodology that flies in the face of traditional power, where people who are elected, the white collar officials, are going to say what's wrong with the city. But that's because they're not close enough to know what's right with the city. And when you focus on what's right, it helps to make the city better.
Absolutely. And I think the other important thing is just building trust with the people.
Right. And that takes time. That takes time.
She doesn't have to try. Like if I go in, people are going to have to work to gain their trust, and that can take time. That can take years. But for Sunita, the trust is already there. They know her.
Because she's
they know
from
who
there.
she is. The teachers know her. You know, people in government, the councilman of the city, one of the councilmen knows and believes in her. He even told me, he said, I'll say yes to whatever she leads because I know her. I've seen her grow up. I know the kind of woman she is. So, you know,
I love that.
It's the way to do it, you know, and stuff. And, you know, as long as I don't have that Messiah Savior complex,
right,
or I want all the glory, you know, just it's for God, you know, and that's really what it's about.
And that's going to strengthen the community. And that's real faith. That's real faith in action. And I know another thing, Peter, that I think underscores what you're doing is that when you and I have talked, I've helped you to understand, you probably had a working knowledge of it, but I think people have forgotten that the civil rights struggle, when it happened, you mainly see black images and black individuals who led it. And certainly that's true. But when black people kicked open that door, it was for white women. It was for Korean Americans. It was for Chinese Americans. It was for folks coming in from other places. And so I know that that's also a part of your knowledge base, that in some ways I think it's okay for you as this podcast is not about coaching you in this process, but I'll just say this as a friend because I know your heart is good. I think that it's important just to stress the fact that most African Americans were not told thank you by other groups. And, you know, one of the things I hear civil rights leaders say often is that white women benefited more than probably any other group when it came to civil rights. But so often it just seemed like it was a black struggle, black marching for black people. And when other communities understand that they're able to do much of what they've done, not because they're the model minority or because they worked harder than everyone else, because black people were working hard and being hosed down and being shot and having dogs bite them in order to really create more avenues for people who are different than the mainstream as well. And so as I sit on the fringes and watch what I think is very exciting with what you and Meadowwood and your team, you and Metro and your team are undertaking, Meadowwood's here in Madison, you and your team in Metro is undertaking, that I also want to just grant you permission that in some of those spaces to explain this is what you do when people open a door for you. This is not merely out of obligation or because we're the model minority, but we wouldn't be in positions of power that we are in if there was not a shift in the American a paradigmic shift that leadership needs to look a lot different, like the traditional white men who've always been in power.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, Alex, what's really important is that for the Asian community, if there are any Asian people listening to this, that we owe a tremendous debt to the African-American community. We would not I know Asian Americans work hard to get into good schools, get good jobs, and all that kind of stuff. I know, but if it wasn't for the African American community and the civil rights, we would not be able to have the opportunities that we have today. And so I think we have a debt. We have a debt to pay to the African American community for what they did and how they were willing to sacrifice for civil rights and for equality here in this country. And I think that's just something that a lot of Asians forget as well, and that they don't see that. And that's been a struggle. That's been a struggle
Sure.
even in our church.
And I'm hoping that our
stuff like
partnership
but absolutely
helps to bring that to light so that people see that.
Absolutely.
And there are places where I have connections in New York, New Jersey, places because you've opened doors for me. I would not have believed that Korean American leaders, business leaders, thought leaders, artists would want to partner with me in our work, because my reality is sort of this, the South Central riots around Rodney King and all of those things that was happening. And so you're helping me to build a new reality that's not the final image that we want to give of Black and Korean relationships or seen from Do the Right Thing, that understanding what civil rights has meant for your community and understanding that we can open doors for each other and build relationships with each other is really important, because it sends the message that this is not just something that Black people could or should fix, because it's not an issue that we have created on our own. It's really a systemic issue. And when people are listening and realizing that as an Asian American, as a Korean American, as a white American, I can have a role, I can have a part in dismantling ugly systems or empowering people or building cross-cultural relationships, is really, really important. And so I want you to know I'm going to be talking to other, specifically Korean American thought leaders, educational leaders, faith leaders, and their role and their part in developing and making room for African American leaders, because this is an important story to tell. And I don't go to very many textbooks where I hear what we're talking about. So you and I and our families have got to continue to be family to each other and friends to each other, so we can model what true partnership looks like.
And think about what the potential could be if the African American community and, let's say, the Korean American community came together, or the Asian American community came together. Think about what could happen in that kind of collaboration.
Wakanda could happen. That's what could happen.
I mean, it would just be amazing. We would be able to really,
we'd be a true threat. We'd be a true threat.
Deal with the powers to be in a much more effective way, I think, as well. If we can just come together, and I think that's the beauty of it, and stuff. When we can come together and there's unity, even in like Richard Twist says it, like you cannot have unity apart from diversity. That's why God is one, because He's three. And I think like the reality of that truth is so real. Like, when there's unity amongst different people groups, that just shows the brilliance of God, and there's just so much more power in that.
And listen, if you're out there, if you're from a Black community and you've been trying to think about how do you reach out to the Korean American community, and if you're listening and you're part of a Korean American culture community and you're trying to figure out how do we build better bridges, hey, come to alexg.com. That's ALEXGEE.com. I know that sounds like an Asian American name, but I'm Black. And alexg.com. Hey, hit us up. Leave us a message, because we've talked about how do we go together to talk with some of these groups. And so, man, unfortunately, Peter, we're getting to the end of our time. But listen, man, I appreciate you as a friend that we learn together, that we understand each other's cultures together, that we spend time in each other's homes and motherlands together. And I just think it's been a powerful, powerful learning experience. And I just want people to get out of their comfort zones and understand that even if you've had bad cross-cultural relationships, there is someone in another culture who wants to build a bridge to someone who looks like you. And so you and I have both had bad experiences, but we're able to find each other and build a strong friendship. And our kids won't have to be as awkward. And they're not as awkward in understanding how we build these relationships. My daughter calls you Uncle Peter. Your kids call me Uncle Alex. We're building a relationship so that people understand we do not have to be as divided as we have been historically. And just having you come and share your story a little bit is incredible. And I'm looking forward to going back with you to South Africa in the early part of next year.
Yes.
And
I can't wait either.
Oh, I might have to take my microphone over there so we can do a couple of shows with Mama Zuma and some of the others.
And Kalani.
Kalani and Audrey. Hey, you need to know that we've had several downloads from South Africa, and I'm able to look at the region, and it's KwaZulu-Natal. So we know it's our people. we know those folks are. So Sinatra, Audrey, Kalani, Mama Zuma, others that are listening. hey, continue to get the word out. And so if you're in the New Jersey, New York area, you want to check out Metro Church. You want to check out the work that Peter Ahn is doing between Korean American and African American pastors. If you go to my website, alexg.com, we will have a link there to his work, to his organizations. You can get a chance to see this wonderful video that he just put up about their desire for community transformation. You can find out about his development project if you want to find out how to support it. Whether you're from that part of the country or not, you know people who are from Bergen County. Come to my website, find out how you can get involved with what he is doing in the community. And also, we're going to have a link for Zameli Way too. If you have always had a heart for South Africa and for what's going on, and you want to empower people and not pity people, alexg.com will have a link under this web that's connected with this podcast, so that you can go and find out more about this organization. And so please, if you like this show, you can do a couple of things for us. First, you can subscribe to the podcast, and that way you will never miss an episode, because I will personally deliver it to your smartphone or your computer. You can do that by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast app. If you're an Apple user, that can be iTunes, or people can also listen on Spotify. If you have an Android, Peter, are you an Android user?
I do.
Hey,
listen, but I get you on Spotify.
You know what? Okay, but listen, tell your Android friends, if you simply go to Google search, but you got to search Black Like Me podcast, not just Black Like Me. You get a whole bunch of black stuff if you do that. Black Like Me podcast will bring you up to the podcast where you'll have the option to play or subscribe. Please subscribe, because you won't miss anything. Click subscribe, and then you can go there, and then you can listen regularly. And also, we're asking our friends if you could please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. That would be beautiful, because we know people are listening and downloading, but your comments help us to improve the show and to let others know that this show is worthy of listening to. And finally, if you have any questions or your thoughts or feedback, feel free to tweet at me, and that on Twitter, of course, that's why you would tweet at me, at Alex G Jr. That's AlexGeejr, at Alex G Jr. on Twitter, or find my Dr. Alex G Facebook page and go ahead and write something on the wall, and we'll be sure to respond. And so I'm excited again by the response around the globe. 15 different countries are listening to what we're doing. And so my special guest has been Pastor Peter Ahn, a good friend, a visionary, and a community influencer. And hey, as we always say, continue to listen in, continue to learn, and continue to live better. Thank you for being part of the Black Like Me family. I appreciate you. Help spread the word.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.